Stunning and hurtful comments from the President of the United States today during a meeting with lawmakers in the Oval Office. This information comes from an exclusive report this evening from our editorial partner at the Washington Post. Inside the Oval Office today, lawmakers floated the idea of restoring protections for immigrants from Haiti, El Salvador, and African countries, all as part of a bipartisan immigration deal. Now, according to the people in that room, the president reportedly said, "Why are we having all these people from expletive countries come here?" Now, the FCC rules won't allow me to say exactly what he said on air, but you can take a look at your screen and figure out what he said. President then suggested that the U.S. should instead bring more people from countries like Norway, whose prime minister just happened to be meeting with the president yesterday. I'm joined by Karina Velasco. She's a local DACA recipient, and Donald Temple, noted trial and civil rights attorney here in Washington. We should point out right now, the White House is not denying the president made those comments. It released a statement saying certain Washington politicians choose to fight for foreign countries, but President Trump will always fight for the American people. Let's start with you, Mr. Trump. Mr. Temple, you know where my head is. Your reaction to what the president said.
I think it's tragic, and in particular, it's more of the same. Not a year ago, the president was criminalizing, in general, Mexicans and Mexico, and this year, he's essentially criminalizing an entire continent. It's 54 countries from in Africa, the Caribbean, and then El Salvador. And the problem is that he's not going to change. Our problem is our own personal responsibility to allow not Donald Trump, but the President of the United States to use terms like that to castigate people and then to perpetrate essentially this cloud of white supremacy in his thinking and now in our immigration policy.
And people see a thread here. I mean, tonight we're not going to mince words here. Tonight people are reminded of what he said about the athletes who were protesting during the national anthem. They're reminded about what he said about former President Barack Obama not being, of this country. So there is some history here with this president. This is more of the same. And people are becoming convinced and very much concerned that this president has some racist tendencies.
Well, it's clear. I mean, I think we need to stop stuttering about it and attempting to rationalize what seems to be a pattern, but also seems to be some mental instability. There's a sense of dichotomy here where we're rationalizing something that has to border on an insanity.
Right. Karina, they were in the Oval Office, Democrats and Republicans, trying to resolve this very important issue of what to do to help the dreamers, to end this nightmare for people like yourself. Your reaction tonight when you hear the president say these kinds of things, and we're having to deal with that instead of what we ought to be talking about first.
Bruce, to be honest, it doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me. He has said many more hurtful comments about Mexican nationals. I'm Mexican myself, and so just to think that he is diminishing these countries, like El Salvador, Nicaragua, Honduras, they are going through political changes right now. They are going through wars. They are going through a lot of changes, and people are fleeing their countries because of these changes. These changes are affecting their lives. And to think that we have a president that does not see that as a humanitarian crisis, it's sad. It's also very disappointing to see that he's saying all this comments, saying all this belittling countries like Central America, like Mexico. And it's just like...
And people from these very countries, Haiti,
yes.
El Salvador, all the African countries, have come here and soared in the classroom, in the workplace. They haven't come here with their hands out. They've come here and they've done us proud like immigrants before them from other places. I mean, does the president know this history? Does he know what he's talking about?
Well, of course. Well, the question is, does he know? And it doesn't matter. The president's emotional maturity on these questions is almost kindergartenish. And he keeps saying it. So we're not going to change the president. But what we have to do, and I underscore this, wherever we are, the churches, the schools, the Congress, any elected official, we have to take some personal responsibility. We can't continue to acquiesce, to be silent. At some point, there's a line being drawn in the sand, and people have to challenge that. This is an extreme situation.
I think journalists ought to be included in that. Media ought to be included in that, yeah.
Everyone who can have a voice in this, when the President of the United States says what he says, he is stigmatizing and denigrating a race of people, in many regards, people of African descent. That includes you and me, because he's saying that we have contributed, essentially, nothing, that our people who have come into this country, however we've come, are basically from, imagine the term of art that he's using.
Yeah. Yeah, and he said Norway. Everybody knows what he meant. He meant white people. That's what he meant, people like him.